Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jackman, and I will give Instagram some time to send out a notification that I'm live. But today I am live, and I have Miss Seneca Williams joining me today. So today we're going to talk about how to cope with everything that's going on. And I know that it's been a while since I've been on personally because I myself has a lot of things going on. But I think it was due time to discuss of everything that's been happening from the pandemic to protest to how to cope and how to deal. So that's what I intend for us to talk about in depth. And I have Coach Seneca Williams with me today. She is a licensed mental health counselor. I'm going to actually add her now while I finish my introduction. So she's a licensed mental health counselor. She has a master's in mental health counseling as well as honors from the International Honor Society of Psychology. Hi, Seneca. How are you? I'm not hearing you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Hearing you perfectly.
Okay, great. Hello. Hi.
Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited for you to be here as I relaunch my Instagram series.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So I actually met Coach Seneca, well, met virtually at Caribbean Women's Power Lunch. And I was like so really enthused by her conversation and the talk that she had. I was very motivated. And I reached out to Coach Seneca and asked if she'd be able to join me. Little did I know when I asked you to join me and we set this date that there would have been so much going on at this time. Like I didn't anticipate having so much to talk about. But I'm glad that you're here with us and I'm glad that you will be able to guide us through, the current state of affairs and how to cope with everything. So I was giving you an introduction, but it may be better for you to just tell us yourself.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Seneca Williams. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I practice online psychotherapy. I am also a coach, and I primarily work with women in my private practice who are careerpreneurs and entrepreneurs who are looking to upgrade their lifestyles and their businesses. And I help them work a lot through their business anxiety, as well as business burnout and the different life transitions and challenges of work-life balance. So yes, I address anxiety, depression, but a lot of it is how do I manage all of this together at the same time? So I have like a holistic approach to it. Like, let's look at all the systems that are affecting you in your life right now.
Right. Which I think is perfect for the current times, because I would say as a society, as a nation, we're dealing with a lot of things at the same time. And everything that we're seeing is a combination, additive effect of one thing happening followed by another, followed by another. And that's not even encompassing people's personal lives.
Right.
That's just everything external.
Yeah.
So I can say, like, even for myself, I was having this series that I was doing pretty often. And then I had a blood clot, a DVT, deep vein thrombosis. And, for me, it took a toll on me physically, emotionally, mentally. And I had to take a break from everything. And then I would say almost instantaneously, different things started to happen externally as well. So that's why I wanted to address this as my first live coming back on. So, what would be your comments right now in terms of like telling people how do they identify like what is actually bothering them now? And then as we progress, we'll talk about how do we deal with it, cope with it, talk it out.
So you want to know what's interesting, and I'm glad that I'm talking to you because I deal with the mind. But even though I deal with the mind, many times people aren't aware of what they're feeling emotionally. So they'll say something like, my stomach hurts, I'm having headaches, my body, my joints are hurting me, my back is hurting me, I can't sleep, I'm having difficulty with my appetite and eating. They'll give me like the somatic symptoms, right? What's going on with them physically. And sometimes when we go deeper and I ask them, they're like, wait, I just realized I am grieving. I've lost several family members, or my friends have lost someone during COVID. I'm grieving because what I'm seeing on the news right now. That is grief. Or I'm traumatized. They don't even realize they're experiencing trauma, grief, anxiety, depression. They're experiencing all these things, but usually it shows up first as the somatic symptoms, what they feel in their body.
Right. And I could definitely attest to that because I've been physically feeling everything that's been going on. From COVID, I worked in a hospital, up to a hospital-based system up to last year, and several of my co-workers unfortunately passed away. And, that hit hard. And then now, watching the video, going through all this in my head, I internalize it and I feel it. And you're right. I felt it before I was consciously aware mentally that it's something going on, not just physically, but mentally. So how do you propose people sit down and identify what may be attributing these physical symptoms? How do you quiet yourself to know what is the cause of this?
I love that you said quiet yourself. One of my colleagues said that we are grieving on the go. Her name is Sharita Gale. And when she said that, I was like, you're absolutely right. Since COVID, right? This is now 3 months later, or about 4 months or whatever. Many of us, right? I know for myself, I just remember a Friday afternoon picking my daughter up from school, and she's 13. I picked her up from school. And when I picked her from school, that evening there was a press conference that school is closed.
Right.
And from then it was like, go. There has been no period of stopping. There's been no period to relax. People are passing away. We were trying to find toilet paper. We were trying to find hand sanitizer. Yeah. Meanwhile, having to transition to homeschooling and working from home, which is usually things you prepare for.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? Usually you would take time and prepare for that. But we were just thrown into this thing without sitting down to think about, what do I even feel? We didn't even have time to feel.
So, just doing.
We're just going and going and going and going. So that's something great that you said. We actually need to really intentionally make time daily to sit down and think and feel. Think, feel, and do. A lot of the actions that we're doing, we're not even realizing is connected to thoughts and feelings. A lot of the things that are happening in our body are connected to thoughts and feelings. So making time every day, and people throw around the word self-care, and they think it's just taking a bubble bath. But part of your self-care is stopping and paying attention to your mental health and assessing what's happening. Am I sad? Am I anxious? Am I angry? Am I burned out? Right? Am I resentful? Feeling and thinking of what you're feeling and allowing yourself to actually sit in that uncomfortableness so you can address it. So it's like stopping yourself.
That is true. And I think that's very important because even for me, I felt like with some of my closer friends, I was being a little hostile. And I'm like, after a while, I had to check myself because I'm like, that is a bit aggressive. It is a bit, and I was like, what am I feeling that's making my response so, quick? And then I realized that I was really internalizing everything and not really discussing it. I wasn't talking about it. I was just internalizing it, feeling it, and then just, someone will ask a question and it would not resonate the right way, and they will get the reaction of everything that I was trying to suppress. And I think for a lot of times, a lot of us have learned to suppress and cope just to, cope with the work day, but you don't really express your feelings. You don't think you have the ability or the right to express your feelings. And sometimes this is the result.
Mm-hmm. I would have to say too, as women, we are strong. We're used to being strong. We're used to overcoming challenges and having to just kind of push forward and not stopping to deal with it and not stopping to cry with it. cry about it or, you know, talk about it. We're just used to pushing forward. So you're absolutely right. Sometimes we're pushing forward and we're not even realizing that we're being snappy, or we have less patience than usual, or we're not communicating the way that we should. All of these things come up when you're just pushing through on autopilot and you're not processing. I experienced that myself because of the influx of therapy clients that I got. Was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this or will ever see anything like this. We're talking about COVID is a pandemic. Mental health is the silent pandemic.
Right, that's
The
true.
amount of people seeking therapy right now. I could not believe how many people I was getting for therapy. So then in my personal life, I have all this in my head and less space to deal with things. And my daughter was calling me out. She's like, Mom, like, you're not patient. You're not talking to me the way that you usually talk to me. Or why are you so sure? Like, you know, why did you just say that like that? And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. But like, my mind is on overload right now and didn't even realize it was coming out like that. Like, I would tell her to do something, like, get that done, you know, like, just do this. And she was like, I don't understand the homeschooling. I'm, you know, struggling here. I don't understand the technology. And I'm like, okay. So we had to think about a routine and a schedule. So I had time to sit down and be patient, you know, and assess what I'm going through.
And that's good. And it's good too that you're getting a lot of patients, because I would say generally as a community, we don't usually seek mental health. It's still somewhat considered taboo. It's not spoken about. It's not talked about. You know, we believe, especially I'm from the Caribbean, so we believe that nothing short of prayers and a little bit of oil and a little bit of this and that could fix it. We don't believe in therapy. We don't believe in mental health conditions. We usually sum it up to that person's just playing the fool. Well, you know, we use a different word, but more or less we sum it up to that. And we don't really understand the importance of, you know, if you need mental health assistance, that nothing is wrong with that. And it should be considered the same as if you need assistance for diabetes or if you're pregnant and seeking medical care. But getting over that stigmatization is also a hurdle that we have to do as a community.
You're absolutely correct. The stigma, we need to kill the stigma. We need to destroy that. I am also from the Caribbean. I'm from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, represent. And where I come from, mental health is not on a spectrum, which, you know, mental health is a spectrum. It's on a continuum. We're all on it. You and I and everyone watching this, we're all on that continuum. But many of us believe you're either sane or insane. And that right there, we have to break that down as a myth, that you're either sane or insane. Because with our physical health, you're not healthy or sick. You could be, you know, at different places with your health. You know, you could be like top bill of health, right? Fully functional, everything great. Or you could have, you know, diabetes. You could have cancer. You could have these different things. But we don't look at physical health and mental health the same way.
Definitely not.
We attach mental health, unfortunately, to character.
And
we need to stop doing that. It doesn't mean you're weak because you're anxious. It doesn't mean you're weak because you're depressed. It doesn't mean you're weak because you are going through a divorce while losing your job and having to deal with homeschooling during COVID and, you know, all these different things. You're not weak because you're having a hard time with that. So many people are dealing with life transitions during this time, and they're resisting the need to get support because they feel like I should be strong. It is strong to get support. Strength needs support.
That is true. That is true. So what do you advise? Do you advise that, you know, in general, people should seek mental health assistance just as a check-in? Or do you think that, you know, how do you propose, when do you know, when would you know, sorry, I should probably look for something a little bit more than what I'm dealing with myself? How does one identify the need for mental health assistance?
I love this question that you asked, and I want to hear your response on it as well. But this is what I will say. I think mental health needs to be integrated into regular physical health. So just
Right.
like we go for a yearly physical checkup, mental health should be incorporated in that yearly physical checkup. And
Right.
either if the primary care physician is going to ask these questions and make the referral, or you yourself will just say, I'm going for my physical this year, my blood work and all that stuff. Let me check in with a therapist as well. Because we think of it as treatment, but it can also be preventative. And I will tell you, a lot of times when people come to therapy, they're like coming in at crisis mode. You don't want to
Yes.
wait till you're in crisis mode. And when you ask them, how long have you been feeling this way? On average, people will say, I felt this way for 6 months to a year.
Right.
That's a long time of not sleeping well, of
Right.
not eating well, of having excessive worries and thoughts, of feeling sad, of crying for out of no reason, just crying. That's a long time to be going through that, having relationship conflict. Having conflict with your children or your parents. That's a long time to be dealing with all of those stressors and not
Right.
getting support.
I agree with your statement when you said that it should be part of your annual physical. And I think if it was incorporated, it will obviously make it so less taboo to go and see a mental health coach, because it's like, you have to do it. Everyone does it. And it's no longer, oh, you're going? I wonder what she's going for. It's like, oh, you're going. Everybody goes for this. I could say that I will attest to seeing a need for it. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist, and I trained at a very, high patient inflow hospital during my residency training. And I did a study 2 years ago on burnout amongst the residents. So I didn't look at attendings who would obviously have probably higher rates. I just looked at us, and I got about a 70% answer rate. So more or less the majority of the residents answered. And it was alarming to see how burnt out everybody was using the MBI burnout scale compared to how burnout they thought they were. So the realization of how burnout we were, we just kind of got accustomed to it and desensitized to it, that we weren't even for ourselves realizing that some of the characteristics that we were showing was clear-cut signs of being burnt out, stressed out, and barely functioning to our optimal level. But we just got accustomed and was just, going through the robotic motion. So that was an alarming thing for me of how much and how pervasive it is. And it was particularly high amongst OBGYN. But also you saw it in the ED or in family practice. Actually, I think the ED residents were the least, but they actually actively had something in their program to counteract burnout. So they had something intrinsically built. But definitely, this is something that I think benefits not just the medical professional, but can benefit any workplace or anyone in particular. So I think that is something that, healthcare professionals should be working towards, making mental health check-in as part of your physical assessment. And I'm seeing that Kyle saying that, it helped him during his school with his performance. So definitely we have people attesting to the fact that it does work.
It does. But you mentioned something very important about healthcare workers, doctors, residents, students. They deal with a lot of mental health. And usually they don't go for the support because of the stigma associated of being a professional and a healthcare worker. They're afraid, what if someone finds out?
Yes.
One of the reasons that I have a private practice, I work with professionals, I work with doctors, I work with attorneys, accountants, I work with healthcare workers. They say they don't want their jobs to find out. They don't want anyone to know that they're getting help because they're afraid of the backlash of what's going to happen if they know that I have depression. What's going to happen if they know that I have anxiety or I have panic attacks. So I don't even know how we can resolve that within the healthcare industry.
Definitely will be much harder. I think for one thing, because I do know of one psychiatrist, he works in the downstate area. I don't know if he works directly in the hospital, but I know that he personally sees patients, like healthcare professionals themselves, and he does it privately. It's like a safe environment, and there's no contact with your job or whatever, and he provided a space so that people would feel more comfortable. And even with that, I can tell you a lot of people probably still don't access this service. Especially as women and female surgeons, we have the highest rate of suicide in any profession. So, it's something alarming that needs to be addressed because, definitely as a career, you don't want to like be leading down that path. So it is something difficult to identify. It is also something difficult to like figure out how you're going to get treated. You know exactly what you need to do. Is just getting the courage, I would say, to do it is a whole different ballpark, a whole different game altogether. But, we need to encourage it. And that's why I think that, as you said, I really love that you said incorporating it, because I think if it was something just routine, it would be much easier. Even if you didn't go to your hospital psychiatrist, you went to the psychiatrist, in 2 hospitals down, or private psychiatrist. I just think that, going to or psychologist, going to someone who will be able to discuss and take you through what you're probably thinking, what you're experiencing, is definitely warranted. And it's definitely one step of combating this, what we're experiencing, coping with this, what we're experiencing.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of like overall other things that we can do in terms of coping, what would be your advice in how people can cope at this time? And I mean, people are experiencing different ranges of emotions. They're experiencing different things, because to some people, the pandemic is still the worst thing that's happening. To some people, it's the disparities in healthcare that's problematic. For some people, it's disparities that you're seeing along with the police brutality, particularly to people of color. That's the most problematic thing. For some people, the protest is the most problematic thing. So how do we guide people to find like where their issues lie, and then how do you cope with it?
Well, everyone is experiencing something different right now and responding differently to what's happening. This is a really good question. With everything that's going on right now, right? We have layer on layer on layer on layer of things happening, right? So you have COVID is still happening. I just lost a family member this past week to COVID.
Oh, I'm
it's
so sorry.
real. Thank you. It's still out there. It still exists. Then you have people re-entering work and things opening up, and that anxiety about going back into your job, going back into public places. Then you have what's going on with the protest and the civil unrest, and as I call it, the millennial movement, the new civil rights movement.
Right.
All these different things going on. I tell people, assess what's going on in your life and focus on self-preservation and self-care. Process before you proceed. What that looks like in your day-to-day life. How are you functioning? Are you not sleeping? Are you not eating? Are you not taking care of yourself? What are you doing? That's where you start. You need to take care of yourself. Second, are you on social media looking through all of these comments, watching all of these videos that are traumatizing to you? There's something called vicarious traumatization. People don't really understand it, but the way I explain it, have you ever seen one of those videos like where you're on a roller coaster, like it's the roller coaster is going up and down?
Right. And you start to like experience it.
Don't you start to feel like you're on the roller coaster and you're going down with it and up, and you actually can feel it? So just imagine
virtual reality.
Right. It's like a virtual reality. The mind is very powerful. It is so powerful. And that's why we have to be careful about what we put into our mind. Because if you, like you just said, if you think about it, that went into your body. You felt it. So just imagine what it feels like to look at someone that is your color on TV, on social media, murdered and dying and dead. That's vicarious trauma. We feel it in our body. That's why so many people have been having stomach aches, back aches, joint aches. They can't sleep. They can't eat. Now you've taken that into your body. So I've been telling people, please filter your social media and your news consumption. You know how people say, I'm here for the comments? this is not the time to be here for the comments. There's so much negativity going on. If you have to be on social media for work or whatever it is, limit that. Check into where you need to check into. If your friends are sending you posts and videos, ask yourself, do I need to see this? Right? What does it do to me to watch this? Stop viewing it. If you feel like I'm sending, huh?
I'm the friend that keeps sending the video.
Well, I am gonna just look at the message and I won't respond. I'm protecting my mental health.
Right.
So, that's even something interesting that you say, right? And, maybe you can say why you're sharing certain things. What makes you share them?
I have just internalized this whole thing. And for me, it goes a little more personal because I lost my brother a couple years ago. It wasn't police violence, but there was race disparity in the healthcare, which was why I lost my brother. So seeing this video to me, I think struck something personally that I didn't realize until I asked myself, why was I internalizing this so much and why was it affecting me so much? I literally was depressed the first week and literally was so sad. And it's only after a while that I realized that, oh, it's because I was like seeing my brother in the circumstance. And as I said, it was not police brutality. My brother drowned, but he was not resuscitated. He wasn't taken to the hospital. He was taken to morgue. And all these things came back up for me. And I realized that this is what was affecting me. And that's why I kept watching. And then it kind of like spiraled, I think, to kind of being obsessed with like looking at these things a bit, that I was now on the sites that were giving you all stories that I've never even heard about. And, I just kept like watching and watching and watching. And then about a couple of days ago, like last week, I think, I told myself, this is not healthy. It's not a healthy way to process. And I was actually realizing what I was doing, why I was doing it. So I kind of pulled back and took my time for some time for myself. But that's, for me, I know why I sort of initially kind of went in a kind of obsessive route with seeking out these videos and feeling like I had to be a very vital part in, trying to overturn this, even in healthcare, trying to make sure that, in healthcare, we're treating people equally as well. In all systems, we're treating people equally. So for me, that was it.
Well, thank you for sharing. I am so sorry to hear of your brother's loss that way. And I can understand the correlation because it's a whole system that we have an issue with. It's definitely not just about police brutality. And that's why it's so emotional for us. You saw your brother. I saw my brother too.
Right.
We all saw someone we know.
Right.
And that's why it hurts so bad. When you were sharing all of that, that was you wanting your voice heard. That was you wanting to do something. That was you wanting to educate. That was you just, right? Yes. That's what was going on, but you realized how it was affecting you emotionally. And I'm glad that you shared that because that's what most of the clients that I've been working with recently have been experiencing as well. They've been feeling like I need to do something, but I don't know what to do. So I told them, let's process first. What's going on? What are you feeling? How are you handling this? And then when you do that, you will have clarity of mind of how I'm going to proceed and what I'm going to do. Okay. And just even using myself, that first weekend, I was laid out in bed for 2 days. You would have thought that George Floyd was my brother, like in flesh. You would have thought that. I was in bed. I couldn't get out of bed. All I could do was wake up. I ate. I would drink water because my body was asking me for water. I felt so thirsty. Isn't that ironic? He was asking for water. I felt so thirsty. I was just drinking water. Again, with that vicarious trauma.
Right.
And after 2 days, I got up and I said, my body needs movement. So I started moving my body. I went out for a walk. I love music. I love soca music. I started playing music, right? Because even within the sorrow and all the pain, we can still find pockets of joy. we can still create that for ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we're not focused on the mission. I had to process what I was going through. I cried. I went through all of that. And then I was like, okay, self-preservation. I'm not looking at these videos anymore. I'm checking out from social media. I'm limiting that. If I'm in conversations with people and it's overwhelming or it's too much, I'm not participating. I'm going to respectfully say I can't talk about this or I can't answer that right now. I even did an interview recently like this, and you know, it was a Caucasian male, and he asked me a question. I was like, I just can't answer that. You know, respectfully, I can't answer that. So my self-preservation was important. Safety with COVID. When I go out now, I have my mask on. I've been telling people, don't get offended if I don't shake your hand or hug you. I'm going to greet you. I'm going to say wonderful things to you, but I cannot touch you right now. That's for my personal safety. So, you know, so self-preservation, my own safety has been something that's important. And then my self-care has been as important. I'm making sure that I'm eating. I'm making sure that I'm sleeping. I'm making sure that I'm taking care of myself. Because I need me to be strong so that I can sustain this movement. And then I had to decide, how do I want to participate? For me personally, my participation, I was like, I don't necessarily want to use my body on the front line and do the protest. For me, you have to think about, for you, what is it? And don't make anyone guilt you for what you choose to do. For me, I know that we need to do some things with mental health. That is very important. We need mental health with the police department. We need mental health overall. In a broad scale, we need mental health for Black and brown people. That's one of my missions. My other mission is our social, economic, and political power, right? So our social power is social media like this. You are using your social power right now, right? You're putting this out here and talking about it. This is your social power. We all have that with social media. Our economic power is making sure that we have businesses or jobs where we are economically stable and we can put money into things that pushes this movement forward. So I've made sure that I've kept my professionals feeling good and my entrepreneurs feeling good so that they can still sustain and make money to push this movement forward. And then political power. Too many of us, myself included, don't show up to the elections that matter. Our local elections. We don't support the people that are younger or that look like us. And we have the same 70, 80-year-old person making laws for us that doesn't even know what life is like in 2020 because they're still stuck back in 1965. So these are all things that I've been sharing with my clients, you know, self-preservation, self-care, right? Safety. And then figuring out for you what will help you feel like you're doing something. So now thinking about that, right, Dr. Janelle, you could think, what do I want to do? I'm not sharing the post. I'm not doing this. What am I going to do now when I sit with this? What do I really want to do? And you said healthcare is a mission for you.
Definitely. I'll still say share some posts, but I'll decrease the amount.
You can share the post, but you know what I'm saying? You don't want to be like, oh, I found this and this.
I know. As Marissa mentioned, I found a TED Talk that I shared with a bunch of my friends. It's not directly on anything that's happening right now. It's actually a bit old. It's from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She's a well-known Nigerian author, and her TED Talk was on, I can't remember the exact name of it, but more or less it was like, be careful where you get the story from. More or less, she was saying that a lot of times the story begins about like secondly, talking about what happened. But you have to make sure that you don't get like a one-sided story or you don't get the story just from one angle. So she was saying that, you know, many times you may get a story about, let's say, the Native Americans and their arrows, and they will be like, oh, well, that was violent. But they fail to mention the fact that, you know, okay, well, the British came, raided them with guns. So, you know, you may get the story that begins somewhere along the lines of secondly, and you're just hearing what the response was, but you need to ensure that you have both sides of the story or all sides, because it may be more than two sides, to know well, what exactly triggered this response? So a lot of people are complaining about the protests, and I would say most of the protests are indeed peaceful, but a lot of people are complaining of the protests happening, but that's a secondary response. You have to ask yourself, well, why are they protesting in the first place? What caused this protest? If, there wasn't murder of an innocent man, would there have been a protest? Or maybe if there was an immediate arrest, would there have been a protest? Maybe not. So, it's just being very self-conscious to know at what point in time you're getting the story, and then trying to follow up to make sure that you have the whole picture, as whole a picture that you can have. Oh, Marissa told me the danger of a single story was the name of that TED talk, the danger of a single story. So if you haven't seen it, I will post it. I will see if I can download it and post it on my feed, my whatever you call those posts, the Instagram posting thing, the news feed. But I definitely think it's a good listen, because I do identify sometimes being the person hearing the story from the secondary part and jumping on it. And then sometimes I experience people judging me from the secondary part without hearing what happened first. So, you can be on both sides of the spectrum, and you just have to check yourself and make sure that at all times you're trying to gather the entire picture, the full picture of what's going on before you respond. So process before you proceed.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to check it out. That name sounds familiar, but I haven't seen that particular TED Talk. But sharing information like that is good information. I'm talking about the things in my inbox where it's like, look at this racist person's comments. Right. Or look at what this person is doing. Or look at what this person said. Like kind of that negative stuff, the very dark stuff. I don't want to see the dark negative stuff. I know it is there. I know it's there, right? Like, I don't know if you're a spiritual person, but like, I know there's God and a devil. I'm a spiritual person. I don't need to like read what the what's going on with the devil worship.
Right. I totally agree.
So like you gotta filter what you're looking at. So like if people are sending me stuff that's negative and I open my inbox and I see that negative thing, I'm not gonna read it and respond to it. I'll open it up, I'll be like, oh, nah, can't do that, right? So like positive stuff that's pushing us forward, that's great, But then also for ourselves, like I said, you have a mission that you want to fulfill, right? So what is that next step for us? We have to think about that. Because after we post on social media, right, that's our social power, our economic power, our political power. It's like, what is our next thing that we're going to do to sustain this?
Right. So I think that is a good idea to think of well, for me, I've been highly involved with some emails, petitions, and just educating myself as well, because being a Caribbean person who only recently migrated a few years ago to the US, I am not that versed in US history. And okay, I would know one or two things that are the more popular stories, but do I really know an integrated full truth of the US history? And the answer to that is honestly no. So a lot of times when I get something, I have to be like, okay, now let me fact check, because these days you have to fact check every single thing through 2-3 times. 2-3 sources. You need to fact check everything. And that's what I've been doing too. I've also been educating myself on the background of what's been going on, because I haven't had as much trauma as I would, as somebody who was born and raised here. Coming from Trinidad and Tobago, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. That would be 100% a lie, but it doesn't exist to the point, at least in my opinion and experience, it doesn't exist to the point of being killed because of your race. I don't think in Trinidad anybody will be killed because of your race. Maybe job opportunities may not be as abundant, but we have, I think, more colorism and classism, and it still doesn't lead to death. It leads to more or less what your power and what your level in society is considered to be. So I definitely think that, growing up in Trinidad for all my life, and even most of my adult life, I haven't experienced a lot of the trauma that comes with being here. But it doesn't take much with being here and being a person of color here to start experiencing the effects of having melanin. Because I can tell you, 2 years ago, I had my first encounter with police where I was going to a 1-year-old birthday party around midday for one of my attendings in Staten Island. And I was driving two of my friends, but I have a two-door car, so you could only really see the friend in the front. You wouldn't realize until you stopped that there's somebody in the back. And the police officer stopped me, and I was worried because by this time I was already aware of like the Sandra Bland story and different stories, and know that, it's not limited to men. So I was very, very extremely nervous, and I kept my hand up the entire time. Even when he asked me to get my license and registration, I repeated to him about 4 or 5 times that my purse is in the back seat. The person in the back seat is going to hand me my purse. And I said it like 4 or 5 times because I was like traumatized from all the stories I knew. And even when I got my purse, I handed him the purse. I was like, you get it. I don't want to go in my bag. I don't want to go in my glove compartment right now for my insurance. I really don't. And he was like, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. I was like, yeah, that's what you're saying now. So after he checked everything, and I'm still there confused because I was like, I have no clue why we're stopped. This is like 20 minutes into the process. He goes, he comes back, and he was like, do you know why I stopped you? I was like, absolutely no reason. He was like, you're the only car that did what you're supposed to do. Apparently, like if a police car is on the shoulder, you're supposed to pull off that lane immediately next to the shoulder. At least this is what he said, and go into another lane. And I was the only car that did that. And I'm like, so why you didn't stop the 10 other cars that didn't? Why did you target me? But obviously I was still traumatized when he's telling me this. I didn't ask a question. I was just so relieved that, he let me go. But it's only after the fact I was like, I shouldn't have been stopped in the first place. So that relief is like a false sense of relief, because I really shouldn't have even been in that position to encounter all that mental and emotional trauma that I was experiencing in that 20 minutes, not knowing what I had done wrong, what was the repercussion, what was going to happen. And honestly, I was fearing for my life, even though I knew I did nothing wrong. I have nothing wrong about me, and I was still experiencing the same thing. And partly, I think that one of the reasons why he let me go so quickly, because it was 20 minutes, was that in getting my ID, I always carry my medical ID with me as well. And why do I do this in America? Because I also use it as a safety reason, and I always hope that I get the opportunity to show you, hey, but I shouldn't have to think like that, but I do. So that's like, another experience for me. So now even anytime like I hear whoop whoop, I've never been stopped by a police officer again. Or probably not like in a circumstance like that to feel like that. So I've never really had to produce anything, but I always 100%, I'll tell you, always walk with my work ID everywhere I go. It could be from a restaurant to a happy birthday dinner. It doesn't matter what it is. This is my experience. And this is something that's been fostered over the past couple of years, because in Trinidad, I've never had to do this. I never had to feel like this, so.
Yeah, that's sad that had to be your experience. That has to be any of our experience. And you're absolutely right. There is something very different when you come from the Caribbean to assimilate to American culture. I actually made a post about it. Like Caribbean people have to come here, assimilate to Black American culture and white American culture, and the culture as a whole, like understanding it. It's almost like you walked into somebody's dysfunctional family and you're trying to figure out what are you guys, what's happening? Like what's happening on both sides? And, it's because of what the country was built on. They already had these issues, and we came into it as immigrants. Now, I grew up in America. I was born in St. Vincent, but grew up in America. But you have to remember, even if you come here, right, and you grow up here, you're still in a bubble of Caribbean culture. Right. You still have the same belief systems and the same things. So you wouldn't understand why Black Americans are behaving a certain way. I was lucky to have a best friend that lived next door to me where I grew up in Brooklyn, and her family was from the South. So they were Black American from the South. And the way that they felt, was like a lot of fear around, white people. And I didn't really understand it coming from the Caribbean, because my parents didn't teach me to have this deep fear of white people or fear of police. And it was really strange for me growing up as a child, like trying to figure out like, well, why is that? But not realizing what it was like in the South for her parents and grandparents, they were in Jim Crow South with
Right.
Confederate flags and KKK sitting on the back of the bus. So they knew all about that, you know, watching Dr. King march and Malcolm X and the assassination. So they had a different frame of reference, and we had to come into that and assimilate now. And then it's like, okay, we're in America as Caribbeans, and when they say they don't see color, what they really mean is they see all of us as the same.
Right.
Like, they don't see you as Trinidadian, I'm Vincentian, and that person is from, you know, they just see we're black. We're all black, we're all African American, we're all from the same place, so we must all think the same and behave the same. And,
Right.
you know, even that is dysfunctional. And I've been telling people, if you were to take time and talk to each person, you would know that everyone is different. Even within the Caribbean, we have our little nuances of differences from island to island, right? So you would know that if you took time to get to actually know people and talk to them, you know, instead of just, oh, just they're black people here, right? It's just so many things that we have to work through, and even understanding laws, right? Someone mentioned it, I forgot the name, about the 13th Amendment. There are a lot of laws that are in place now that just need to be erased.
Right.
And if you ever look at the 13th Amendment, right, it was to end slavery and say that slavery is not legal, except if that person is incarcerated, except if they're in trouble and they go to jail.
Oh.
So there are many people in jail right now that look like us, right?
Right.
That are free labor. They're free labor. There are a lot of private prisons where there is free labor still. Just imagine what that does to you psychologically, that you live in a place that you can get arrested for something like carrying a little marijuana and end up in jail for years and years and years because of this unequal justice system. And
Right.
that amendment, that was a loophole at that time. People didn't want to give up their slaves.
Right.
You know, so we're getting political now. People didn't want to give up their slaves. So it's like, well, you know what? Slavery is not legal, but if this person gets arrested, they can work for you for free.
Right.
That law shouldn't even, that amendment right there should be amended. You know, like, that shouldn't even be a thing. Because when you look at the criminal justice system, it's not balanced.
Right.
So all of that stuff from centuries ago, we need to get rid of that stuff today. And that's why that stop and frisk and, you know, black people getting pulled over and all that. Yes, I know other people get pulled over, but when we get pulled over, it's different. We don't get warnings. We get tickets or arrested. Right. And I can't even tell you the amount of times I've been in a car that's been pulled over. More times than I lost count how many times. Or I can't tell you how many times I've interacted with police and it turned out, I called the police and it turned out negative, where it could have ended up someone being killed or me on the news saying justice for somebody. So there are so many things here that are traumatizing to us that we carry every day.
I fully hear you, because I've been seeing videos in my video watching recently too. As you said, I saw a video very recently of you know, good citizens calling the police because they actually caught the looters, and the looters were making their way to escape. And there was like a TV news crew, and immediately as the police came, the people who called the police that turned out to be African Americans were immediately arrested. And the news crew was like, no, they're the ones who called you. And they refused to listen to the ones they were arresting, but the news crew, because I guess obviously, you know, the news host was, you know, a Caucasian woman, you know, they listened to her and she was like, these are the people who called you in the first place. And by wasting your time arresting them, the actual criminals are probably getting away at this point in time. And just seeing this in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, would you actually feel comfortable calling the police? And I understand that a lot of people wouldn't. And I understand why. So there's a lot of restructuring that needs to be changed, definitely.
Yeah, we need to build something new. And, you know, I won't get into the details of the stories, but that's happened to me twice, where I've called the police for the safety of myself or people that I know, and then I saw them in handcuffs. And I'm like, they are not the ones who I call the police on.
Right.
And the guilt I felt for that, oh my gosh, what if that person was shot or killed because I called the police, is heavy. And it makes me now feel like I don't want to call the police.
Yep. So what do you do in those scenarios?
I don't know. I'm really honest with people. I don't know. And, you know, I've been very transparent with clients. I'm in this with them, right? I'm in this too. I really don't know. Do I call the police? Do I not call the police? I don't know. What I do know is we have to change something. We have to change the system. We have to throw away the papers, burn the papers, and get some new documents and some new laws or something. We need to start over. That's all I know. We need to start over. But what do we do? For our mental health, the only thing we can do is find our time in our spaces of healing.
Right.
You know, I was speaking on a sister circle, I think it was last week. We have to find our spaces where we can't stay in a constant trauma and a constant fear. We have to find times where we talk with each other like this, where we can gather together, where we can pray together, where we can dance together. Caribbean people love gathering. You know, Trinity, I know you love to lime. So we got to get these times where we have a break in all of this trauma. We have to have breaks. And we have to have moments where we just lay out in the sun and enjoy the sun, and moments where we enjoy our families, and moments when, you know, we do other things that make us feel good. I tell people, DOSE, sometimes we need a dose of happiness. We need to do things that dopamine, that will, you know, make the happy chemicals start flowing, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. We need to do things that uplift us and make us feel good about ourselves, and remind ourselves that historically we have done major things in America to build America. We belong here just like anybody else, immigrants as well. I posted something, I'm going to check your feed, Janelle, you could check my feed. I posted an article about Caribbean Americans that have took part in building this country.
Right. I definitely need to read that.
Yeah, like it was an article listing all these different people who have made major changes in America and still do. And I said, we're not just here for beef patties and reggae music and good ganja. You know? They usually just think of us, oh, I'm gonna go on vacation to the Caribbean, and you know, and I'm gonna enjoy this culture, but you know, we make impact.
Right. I definitely agree with that we do belong. I think if you think of it, America is 90, if not more percent, everybody came from somewhere. Nobody was originally from here besides the Native Americans. So, you know, we have to appreciate. I wish there was like we can just like flash forward to some point in time where we don't see, you know, distinction in color, creed, race. I was literally researching going over my national anthem. We have a line: every creed and race find an equal place, and may God bless our nation. And I think it's such a deep line, because really, I think that's how we should live. It really doesn't matter what you look at externally. It's what you are on the inside. And for me, that's really how it matters to me. And I guess because growing up in a totally different society where I didn't have to face a lot of the things growing up, and in my bubble of where I went to school, I'm from the south of the island, we didn't see, you know, color and race and religion. I went to an all-Catholic school, but guess what? We celebrated every single religious holiday. And that's how we do in Trinidad. We celebrate every single religious holiday. A couple weeks ago, I posted my roti because it was Eid, and I got an inbox, oh, I didn't know you were Muslim. I was like, I'm not, but I'm Trinidadian. And for Eid, we celebrate in Trinidad, we celebrate Eid, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Christmas, and we do these things as a country, as a nation, and there's nothing wrong with it. So if I was in Trinidad, I would wear my Indian wear. I don't have any here, but if I was in Trinidad, I would do it, because we all just embrace everyone's culture, and we like that mixing of culture. And it's much a harder concept to get in the US for some reason, but you know, I just wish that, and I hope that I can live to see a point in time where this is like the norm. this is, one of my friends actually commented earlier on the post, and she's mixed and fair in color, but yet she said when she moved to Texas, someone referred to her as a mongrel. And that is such an offensive term to call someone. She's human. She's a person. Doesn't matter what you're mixed with, what you have, what your ancestors are. I don't even know half my ancestors, what they were, to be honest. In Trinidad, I think almost everyone is mixed. As much as I know, my mom's dad was majority Indian. My mom's mom was Black. My dad's mother is Venezuelan. And I'm like, we identify what we look at, what we look like. So phenotypically what we look like, that's what we identify at. But definitely in the Caribbean, and I think to a certain extent in America as well, if you really do your genealogy and go back historically, you're probably not what you think, or not 100% what you think you are. So everyone is everyone, and I hope that we reach a space and a place where literally every creed and race find an equal place. And, we believe in God and trust in God that will happen at some point in time. Do you have any other coping mechanisms that we didn't touch on?
Well, we talked about going to therapy, which is, the obvious.
Right.
We talked about creating safety plans for yourself, how you care for yourself, going out and interacting with people, what makes you feel safe in this COVID world that we still in. We talked about self-preservation, protecting your mental health, the conversations that you have, the intake, the consuming of news and different things, as well as self-care, eating, sleeping, managing, your day-to-day. And then also, like I said, finding things that make you have joy, really tapping into what makes you feel good. I think it was 2 weeks ago, I went amazing to do that. It just really felt good. I had a virtual graduation for my daughter, from 8th grade graduation with the family, and we had music. It felt great. All of these things are our coping skills, right? And the thing is, what works for you may not work for me, may not work for somebody else. So it's really just taking time daily, checking in with yourself.
Right.
What am I feeling right now? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Think, feel, do. Have a daily check-in with yourself. Observe what's going on with you, right? Like you said, you didn't realize you were being short or whatever with people, I think you said earlier. Just observing what's going on with yourself, reflecting on why you're doing the things you're doing. And then what is going to be your action after that? Like, how are you going to change that? What do you want to work on? What do you need support with? And we need to just really stick together right now. We're not all going to agree. We're not all going to have the same mindset about how we move forward in this thing. And we have to respect that everyone is going to do what's best for them right now. Some of us are going to protest. Don't shame someone who's not going to protest. Don't shame someone who is protesting. You know what?
Right.
Some of us are going to, be doing lives like this and promoting our businesses. Don't shame people for promoting their businesses. They need to promote their businesses. That's how they make money and buy food and pay their bills. I see so much stuff online right now, and I'm just like, do what works for you, and let's all, get along while we fight the fight.
Yeah. I fully agree. And talking about promotion of businesses, how would someone contact you if they feel like they need therapy? Because you do online sessions, which is obviously perfect at this time. So how do we get in contact with you if we need to go a little further into ourselves?
They can find me at senecawilliams.com, SENECA Williams.com. They could also find me on all social media as Ask Coach Sen. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, I think Pinterest. I'm all over as Ask Coach Sen. And, people sometimes just Google me. I'll ask them, how did you find me? And it's like, I went to Google and I found you. So, I am out there. And, I'm happy. Oh, Alexa. Okay. I don't know why she's talking. Alexa, be quiet. Technology. Oh my goodness. Alexa off. Okay, technology. They were listening to our conversation. Anyway, the point is, if you reach out to me, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or refer you to someone that can support you as well. Therapy, coaching, I support people who are professionals and entrepreneurs.
Right. Thank you so much. Do you have any closing words? I think this was super helpful. I think a lot of people would have learned how they can cope and how to even identify first and then coping, including myself. I will definitely be reposting this live, or we're counting down. So any final words before we go?
Process, then proceed.
I love that. If nothing else, you remember, process and then proceed. So thank you very much, Seneca, for joining us today and giving us your wisdom, teaching us how to cope and leading us to the future. It's Ask Coach Sen. You can find her, and that's all for today. Bye-bye.